On our anniversary, I ended up waiting for 3 hours. The special dinner I'd cooked was in the warming oven, getting reheated over and over. Finally, my wife, Eleanor Hayes, walked in. She brought in a cold, sharp scent with her, a perfume that didn't usually hang around our house. I knew the fragrance. It was a high-end men's cologne, the kind Liam Cole always wore. Eleanor dropped her coat on the rack in the hallway without a second thought, then went straight to the dining table and sat down across from me. She didn't even glance at the lit candles or the fancy meal. Instead, she pulled a document from her briefcase and slid it over to me. "It's about Liam," she said. "I promised him and his son a proper family." Her voice was completely flat, like she was just reading a news report. "Name your price." I looked from her beautiful, cold face to the paper. A few words printed in bold on the cover felt like sharp stabs in my eyes. Divorce agreement. I didn't feel any actual pain, just this weird urge to laugh. So, this was how it ended. 7 years of being high school sweethearts, 7 years of me supporting her as she built her massive company, 7 years of me being the successful-looking husband on her arm. It all boiled down to a casual, uncaring, "Name your price." I didn't bother checking the money details. I flipped right to the very last page. Next to the part that said I'd leave with nothing, there was a number with so many zeros I couldn't count them all. That was just Eleanor's way. She valued everything, including feelings, in terms of money. In her mind, that huge amount was enough to pay for my 7 years of time, enough to make sure I left quietly so she could be with her real love. "Eleanor," I said, looking up. The candlelight flickered in my eyes, and I tried hard to keep my voice steady. 7 years? And this is how you finish it?" She leaned back in her chair, her long, thin fingers nervously tapping the table. A flash of impatience crossed her eyes. "Darling, we're both grown-ups. Let's not make this difficult. Liam can't wait much longer. I've been more than fair to you." "More than fair," I repeated quietly, a bitter taste filling my mouth. I thought back to college, to the time she'd stood out in the pouring rain all night outside the library just to get me a ticket for a sold-out orchestra concert. I remembered the early days of her company, when we lived crammed into a tiny studio apartment, sharing a single bowl of instant noodles. She promised me then that one day I would live in the most wonderful house in the world. She kept that promise. The mansion we lived in cost millions, with an amazing view of the river right outside our window. But I felt like I was in a fancy cage that got colder every day. She came home less and less, and the scent of her perfume changed with the seasons. The only time I ever saw her really full of life was during interviews for magazines like Forbes. And then there was Liam Cole, my old college rival. The man who always seemed to be trying to copy me and beat me at everything. I once thought it was just a silly competition, but I never imagined he would scheme his way into destroying my marriage. I took a deep breath, pushing down the strong feelings churning inside me. For a woman who had already decided to leave, acting emotional would only make me look pathetic and cheap. I picked up the red wine bottle, poured myself half a glass, and poured her half a glass too. "Fine," I said. "I'll agree to the divorce." Eleanor's eyebrows went up slightly, as if she was surprised by how easily I gave in. I raised my glass, making a toast to her and the chilling silence in the room. "But before I sign, have one last meal with me. After all, today is our final anniversary." She was quiet for a moment before finally raising her glass. The meal was eaten in a heavy silence. The crust on the beef pastry was still perfectly crunchy, the meat inside tender and juicy, but I couldn't taste a thing. I looked at the woman sitting across from me. She had once been the dream of my whole youth, the reason I was willing to give up my own career, happy to be the quiet support behind her. But now she was just sitting there, her face the same, but her spirit completely gone. After dinner, I cleared the plates and made her a cup of her favorite tea. The steam rose in light curls, softening her sharp, cold features. "Eleanor," I said, looking her directly in the eye, saying every word clearly. "When we divorce, I don't want anything. The house, the cars, the money, keep it all for you and Liam. I only have one condition." Her hand holding the teacup paused. She looked up at me, a question in her eyes. "What condition?" "I just want to be free," I said. The moment the words left my mouth, I felt a massive weight lift off me. Yes, not revenge, not a fight, just freedom. Freedom from this marriage that was a marriage only in name. Freedom from the endless waiting and doubting myself. Eleanor didn't seem to understand, or maybe she just didn't believe it. In her world, a divorce meant fighting for the biggest payout, securing your future. Someone like me, who wanted nothing, was unimaginable. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice carrying a superior, pitying tone. "Darling, don't be childish. Take the money. At least it will make sure you and our son, Ethan, can live comfortably." She mentioned Ethan, our 5-year-old son. It was the first time she had brought him up all night. My heart felt like it was being painfully squeezed by an invisible hand, the hurt so sharp I could barely breathe. But my face stayed calm. I even managed to force a small smile. "That won't be necessary," I said. "I'll take care of Ethan." I stood up, walked to the study, and got out my nice pen. I uncapped it, and without hesitating, signed my name at the end of the agreement. Elias Vance. The writing was neat and elegant, yet it had an undeniable sense of finality. Then I pushed the signed agreement back across the table to her. "Now it's your turn." Eleanor looked from the document to me, her expression complicated. Maybe in her mind she had won this fight too easily. She hadn't even needed to use her backup plans. She didn't hesitate any longer, picking up the pen and quickly signing her name. Her signature, as elegant and sharp as she was always so confident, so bold. After signing, she stood up, buttoned her jacket, and walked away without looking back at me. No goodbye, no hug, not even a simple, "Take care." The door clicked shut, and all my warmth, all my history, was shut out. I stood in the huge, empty living room, watching the flickering candlelight on the table, and was struck by the bitter truth of it all. I walked quietly to my study, pulled another sheet of paper from a file I had prepared a long time ago, took out my phone, and dialed a number I knew by heart. "Hello, Michael. It's Elias." "Yes, she signed it." "Good. We can move forward with the plan." Hanging up, I walked to the window and watched Eleanor's car speed away, disappearing into the city's bright lights. I gently touched the paper in my hand. Printed on it in clear, bold letters were the words "Supplemental Agreement regarding the custody of the marital child, Ethan Vance." After Eleanor left, the mansion went completely silent. I stood by the huge floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the sparkling city lights, feeling like a lost soul the world had forgotten. But that feeling lasted only a few minutes before it was replaced by a calm I hadn't felt before. I knew that from this night on, I was no longer Eleanor Hayes's husband, waiting for his wife to come home. I was just Elias Vance, a father responsible for his own future and his son's. I went back to the study and locked the signed divorce agreement in the safe. Then I took the supplemental custody agreement, along with my son's passport, my passport, and a stack of other prepared documents, and placed them all in a large envelope. Once that was done, I went upstairs and gently opened the door to Ethan's room. The little guy was fast asleep, his long eyelashes casting soft shadows on his cheeks. He was clutching a slightly worn teddy bear, the one I had sewn for him myself, on his 3rd birthday. Eleanor hadn't been there that day. She said she had an important international call. I later found out she had gone to a design show in Italy with Liam. I sat on the edge of his bed, gently stroking Ethan's soft hair. My heart felt like it was soaking in warm water, both aching and soft. This child was the only good thing from my 7-year marriage. The next morning, I made Ethan breakfast as usual: milk, cereal, and his favorite strawberries. Watching his happy, satisfied little face, the last bit of hesitation in my heart disappeared. At 10:00 a.m., the doorbell rang. It was my lawyer, Michael Lee. He was a few years ahead of me in college and one of the best family law attorneys in the country. The moment I decided to get a divorce, he was the first person I thought of. "I'm ready," Michael said, pushing up the gold-rimmed glasses on his nose, his voice steady. I nodded and handed him the envelope. "She signed it last night. She has no idea." Michael took the documents, quickly scanned them, and handed me a pen. "Sign here, Elias. Once you sign this, there's no turning back." I looked at the supplemental agreement regarding the custody of the marital child, Ethan Vance. In the most strict legal language, it clearly stated, "The parties, through friendly negotiation, mutually agree that sole legal and physical custody of the marital child, Ethan Vance, shall be granted to the father, Elias Vance. The mother, Eleanor Hayes, voluntarily gives up all rights to custody, visitation, and guardianship of Ethan Vance." This was my real condition. Without the slightest hesitation, I signed my name. Just as I was about to hand the documents back to Michael, my phone rang. It was Eleanor. My heart skipped a beat as I saw her name flash across the screen. I motioned for Michael to wait, then answered the call and put it on speaker. "Elias Vance, what in the world are you trying to do?" Eleanor's voice, tight with barely contained anger, came through the phone. I pretended to be confused. "What do you mean? Didn't we already agree on everything?" "Agree? What's this about you sending your lawyer to see my lawyer? And what's this about getting assets officially confirmed? Didn't you say you didn't want anything? Are you changing your mind now?" Her voice was full of contempt and scorn. I laughed quietly to myself. "Eleanor, you're still so arrogant. I truly don't want anything," I said calmly. "I sent Michael over just to make sure our agreement is legally binding and to prevent any problems later. You're so busy, I didn't want to bother you with small details." My polite explanation clearly stunned Eleanor. She was silent for a moment, and when she spoke again, her tone had softened, though it still sounded superior. "Fine, Elias. I expect you to keep your word and not pull any stunts. I've already had my finance department send the money to your account. It's enough for you to live comfortably for the rest of your life." That was all. The line went dead. Michael looked at me with a mix of pity and admiration. "She didn't even ask what the official confirmation was about." "She wouldn't," I said, a bitter smile touching my lips. In her world, I had nothing besides money and our son. She naturally assumed everything I was doing was for money, and I used that very arrogance and superiority against her. I handed the signed supplemental agreement and the other documents to Michael. "Michael, I'm counting on you for the rest." "Don't worry," he said with a serious nod. "I'll get everything processed as quickly as possible. The plane tickets and arrangements in Switzerland are all set. You can leave." Whenever you're ready." After seeing Michael off, I started packing. There wasn't much to take. Everything in this mansion was stamped with the identity of Eleanor Hayes's husband, but there was no sign of Elias Vance. The trophy from the curating award I won in college was gathering dust in a corner of the storage room. The design sketches I'd drawn by hand were carelessly stuffed in a study drawer, ignored by everyone. I only took a few of Ethan's favorite toys, some of our photos together, and the first gift Eleanor ever gave me, which I kept hidden in the bottom of my jewelry box. A necklace made from a strange, unique stone she'd found on a beach. It was worthless, but it was once my most treasured possession. I didn't touch anything else, including the massive sum Eleanor had sent to my account. I didn't take a single penny. I left a note and a generous payout for our nanny, Mrs. Johnson. She had watched Ethan grow up and was the only person in this house who had treated me with genuine kindness. I didn't want to drag her into this. In the evening, I got a call from Michael. "Elias, it's all done. The legally binding official document is in effect. Eleanor's lawyer has confirmed that she herself has no objection to the voluntary relinquishment of custody clause." "Thank you, Michael. I owe you one," I said, my voice a bit strained. "Of course. Have a safe trip, and let me know when you land in Switzerland. A whole new world is waiting for you there." After hanging up, I took one last look at the house I had lived in for 5 years. The setting sun cast long, patchy shadows on the floor through the enormous windows. This place once held all my beautiful dreams of love and family, but now it was nothing but a pile of cold, broken pieces. I felt no attachment. Holding a sleeping Ethan, I pulled a single small suitcase behind me and walked out the door without a second thought. In the taxi on the way to the airport, I sent Eleanor one last text message. "Goodbye, Eleanor. I wish you and Liam a happily ever after." Then I blocked her number. Outside the car window, the city lights blurred and moved away. I looked at Ethan's peaceful sleeping face in my arms, and a sense of calm washed over me. The night before I decided to leave, the same night Eleanor signed that supplemental agreement, I did something that surprised both her and myself. I cooked. I prepared a lavish Last Supper for her. In the later years of our marriage, this was almost unheard of. Ever since Eleanor's career took off, our kitchen had become the private domain of professional chefs, while I was molded into the perfect accessory, a handsome, well-dressed partner meant to smile by her side at fancy parties. She had told me more than once, "Elias, you don't need to do these things. Your hands are for wearing a fancy watch and running an art gallery, not for getting greasy in the kitchen." At the time, I foolishly thought it was her way of caring for me. Only later did I realize she just needed an Eleanor Hayes's husband who fit her status, an elegant, sophisticated symbol devoid of any domesticity. The Elias Vance, who was once willing to cook for her, had long been removed from her plan. So, when Eleanor saw the dining table laid out with several of her favorite dishes, duck with orange sauce, braised short ribs, and a carefully prepared lobster soup, a flicker of surprise crossed her face. "You made this?" she asked, her tone curious. "Yes," I said, serving a bowl of soup for her and placing it in front of her. My voice was as calm as if I were discussing the weather. "I figured we might not have many chances to eat together again. Let's just call it an amicable parting." She didn't say anything, just quietly accepted the bowl. We ate that meal in a strange silence, the only sounds being the clinking of silverware and soft chewing. I didn't bring up the divorce again, nor did I mention Liam. Instead, like an old friend, I started talking about our college days. "Remember our junior year, when we entered the big university art competition?" I swirled the red wine in my glass, the candlelight creating a mesmerizing glow. We were broke back then, staying in the cheapest motels and eating the simplest takeout to save money. You spent several all-nighters in the library helping me with research, and you ended up falling asleep right at the desk. Eleanor's hand, holding her knife and fork, paused. She looked up at me, a complicated emotion I hadn't seen in a long time flickering in her eyes. "Of course I remember," she said softly. "You won the gold medal in the end." "We won the gold medal," I corrected her. "I never could have completed that project without you. That was the first major award of my life and the starting point of my career as a curator." I had thought it would be the beginning of our shared dream. But later, her dream grew bigger and bigger, large enough to swallow the whole world, while my dream was confined by her to the four walls of this mansion. "Back then you even said you'd invest in me, help me open the top art gallery in the country," I said with a slight, self-mocking smile. Eleanor's gaze flickered, avoiding mine. "The company was just starting out. I was too busy," she explained vaguely. I knew it was just an excuse. It wasn't that she didn't have time, it was that she didn't want me back in that world. She needed a husband who was completely dependent on her, not a partner with his own career and his own success. "Eleanor," I said, putting down my wine glass and looking at her seriously, "do you know why I fell in love with you?" She didn't answer, just watched me, waiting. "It wasn't because of how much money you made later, or because of how beautiful you are. It was because when everyone else thought my wild ideas were just crazy talk, you were the only one who would listen intently and then tell me, 'Elias, you have a spark in your eyes. Don't ever let it go. Out!'" My voice cracked, but I forced myself to remain calm. "But in the end, the person who put out that spark was also you." Eleanor's breath caught. She seemed to want to say something, but ultimately just took a silent sip of her wine. Maybe my words had struck a chord, or maybe the atmosphere of this farewell dinner was too heavy. She didn't dismiss me with her usual, "You're overthinking things again, Elias." "I'm sorry," she finally managed to whisper, the words coming far too late. I shook my head. "It doesn't matter anymore." It was true. It didn't matter. Once you've collected enough disappointment, no apology can fix it. "I might take Ethan to Switzerland for a while next week," I mentioned, as if it were an afterthought. "He's been having this cough lately. The doctor thinks it might be some kind of allergy, so a change of scenery might help." "Switzerland?" Eleanor frowned. "You don't know anyone there. Can you manage with a child all by yourself?" "It's fine. A college friend of mine settled there. She can help out," I said lightly. She just made a sound of agreement and didn't ask any more questions. She probably thought it was just a typical post-divorce trip to heal. She would never imagine it was a one-way move. At the end of the meal, I handed her a stack of miscellaneous household documents, with the supplemental agreement she had already signed mixed in. "These are some utility bills and the renewal form for Ethan's insurance. Have your assistant take care of them." I pointed to the agreement on top. "Oh, and this is a permission slip for one of Ethan's kindergarten activities. It needs a parent's signature. Could you sign it too?" Eleanor was on an important work call at that moment. While speaking fluent English into her phone, she impatiently took the stack of papers from me. Without even looking, she flipped to the last page and, at the signature line, quickly wrote her elegant, sharp signature. In that instant, watching her focused, uncaring profile, the last shred of warmth in my heart completely vanished. What was I still hoping for from a woman who couldn't even be bothered to glance at a document concerning her own son's custody? She finished her call, tossed the signed papers on the table, and stood up abruptly. "I have another meeting at the office. I have to go." She walked to the hallway, put on her coat, and paused with her hand on the doorknob. She looked back at me, her expression complicated. "Elias, take care of yourself." It was the only thing she said all night that carried any hint of concern. I didn't answer, just watched her silently. The door opened, then closed. I sat alone at the empty dining table, looking at the leftover food and the document that would decide the fate of the rest of my life. And suddenly, I laughed. The morning after Eleanor left, sunlight streamed through the blinds, cutting bright stripes across the floor. I woke up early, made breakfast for Ethan, and placed our few pieces of luggage by the door. Everything was proceeding exactly as I had planned, orderly and calm. At 9:00 a.m., Eleanor's assistant, a young man named Chris, called, his voice respectful. "Sir, Ms. Hayes asked me to inquire when it would be convenient for you to move out. Mr. Cole will be moving in today, and Ms. Hayes was hoping you wouldn't run into each other to avoid any awkwardness." I held the phone, listening to his words, my heart turning to ice. She couldn't even wait a single day before moving her new man in. "I understand," I said, taking a deep breath to keep my voice as steady as possible. "Tell her I'll be gone before noon. She doesn't need to worry. I won't make things difficult for her." After hanging up, I looked at Ethan, who was sitting in the living room, completely absorbed in building with his blocks. The last flicker of doubt in my heart was extinguished. This place was no longer our home. I knelt and pulled Ethan into my arms. "Ethan, how about Daddy takes you to a really fun place? It has huge, snowy mountains and little trains, just like in a fairy tale." Ethan looked up, his big, dark eyes shining with curiosity. "Really? Is Mommy coming with us?" My heart clenched painfully. Mommy has to work. She's very, very busy." I forced a smile and kissed his forehead. "When Mommy isn't so busy, she'll come find us." The lie tasted like acid in my mouth, but I had no choice. I couldn't let a 5-year-old boy bear the burden of the adult world's cruelty and betrayal. At 10:30, a plain black SUV pulled up to the mansion's entrance. Michael had arranged it for me. It would take us directly to the airport's VIP terminal. I took Ethan's hand, pulled our small suitcase behind me, and walked out of the house I once thought I would live in for the rest of my life. The moment the door closed behind me, I didn't look back. The car drove smoothly away from the wealthy neighborhood, leaving the beautiful, cold architecture far behind. Meanwhile, in Eleanor's office, she was triumphantly leading a video conference with her team, planning a multi-billion-dollar merger. During a break, Chris knocked and entered, reporting in a low voice, "Ms. Hayes, he's moved out." Everything went smoothly. Eleanor nodded, a satisfied expression on her face. In her mind, Elias's sensible departure had saved her a lot of unnecessary trouble. She even felt a little smug, certain that her decision to rip off the Band-Aid had been absolutely correct. "Good," she said with a wave of her hand. "Have the cleaning service go over this afternoon and get rid of all his things. And redecorate the nursery, change it to a style Liam likes." She paused, then added, "Oh, and tell Liam he can just move in tonight. I'll be home early." She couldn't wait to start building a new nest with her new partner. On the other end of the line, Liam was ecstatic when he got the news. He immediately called his friends and headed straight for the fancy department stores to outfit himself for his new role as Lord of the Manor. "See, I told you Eleanor loves me most," he boasted, swiping the black card Eleanor had given him. "That Elias guy was just for show. Now he has to step aside for me, doesn't he?" Everyone was basking in their own victory and joy. No one knew that at that very moment, I was sitting in the VIP lounge at Zurich International Airport, holding my son and sipping a warm latte. It was Ethan's first time on a plane, and he was beside himself with excitement. His little face was pressed against the massive window, watching the planes take off and land, letting out gasps of wonder. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a message from Michael. The official documents have been sent via encrypted email to the law firm in Switzerland. Your new identification and bank accounts have all been activated. Elias, from now on, you are free. I read the words, and my eyes welled up. Free. Such a precious, luxurious word. I deleted every contact and photo related to Eleanor from my phone, leaving only a single picture of the three of us at the hospital right after Ethan was born. In the photo, Eleanor was holding tiny Ethan, a gentle smile on her face, while I leaned against her, my eyes shining with happiness. I once thought that was forever. Looking back, it was just a self-deceiving dream. I deleted that photo too. Let the past die. Ladies and gentlemen, Flight LX-197 to Zurich is now boarding, a sweet voice announced over the intercom. I stood up and took Ethan's hand. Ethan, let's go. Daddy, where are we going? We're going to rebuild our world. I looked at him as the plane outside slowly moved, then accelerated. Finally, I held Ethan's hand as the city below us grew smaller and smaller, blurring into a sea of glittering lights. It took Eleanor 3 days to realize something was wrong. For those 3 days, she was on top of the world. With her cold, distant husband gone, she had the warm and attentive Liam at home, reigniting a passion she hadn't felt in years. Liam did everything to please her, waiting on her hand and foot. He had redecorated the house, filling it with signs of love. She was very satisfied. She felt this was the life she wanted: domestic warmth, adoring eyes, and a child who needed her protection. As for Elias and Ethan, she thought of them occasionally, but the thoughts were quickly drowned out by Liam's tender affections. She figured Elias had probably taken the boy somewhere to recover. Once he'd spent all the money and come to his senses, he would contact her. Then she, as the victor, could bestow some charitable concern upon him, and her duty would be done. She hadn't even bothered to call Ethan once. The child was young, she reasoned. As long as he was with his father and had money, he wouldn't suffer. However, her peaceful confidence was shattered on the afternoon of the 3rd day by a phone call. It was from the nanny, Mrs. Johnson. I had let her go, but Eleanor, thinking she was experienced, had hired her back. Ms. Hayes, Mrs. Johnson said, her voice tinged with confusion and anxiety. Are you sure you want to completely redecorate the young master's room? Eleanor was at a baby boutique with Liam, picking out gifts for Liam's child. Hearing this, she frowned impatiently. Of course. Is there a problem? But the young master didn't take any of his things with him, Mrs. Johnson said, her voice growing more urgent. All his little clothes, his toys, and his favorite storybooks are still here. Mr. Vance left in such a hurry with just one small suitcase. If he didn't take these things, what will the young master use in Switzerland? What Switzerland? Eleanor's mind went blank, as if she'd been hit over the head with a club. Switzerland, Mrs. Johnson said, as if it were obvious. Didn't Mr. Vance take the young master to live in Switzerland? He wrote it all in the letter he left for me. He said the air there is better for the young master's asthma, and he also said you had already agreed and given him full custody so he could start a new life there with a clear conscience. Live there? Custody? Eleanor's face turned deathly pale. Her hand clutched the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. What did you say? Say that again! She practically roared. Liam, standing beside her, jumped in fright. Eleanor, what's wrong? Eleanor spoke into the phone, her voice a low growl. The letter he left. Where is it? It's on the table in my room. Eleanor hung up before Mrs. Johnson could finish. Like a crazed lioness, she bolted out of the store, jumped into her car, and sped home. She ran countless red lights, the car's engine screaming. Her mind was in chaos, Mrs. Johnson's words echoing like a curse. "Live there! Custody! You agreed! Impossible! How could Elias dare? How dare he take her son away without her permission?" She stormed into the mansion, not even bothering to change her shoes, and ran straight for the nanny's room. Mrs. Johnson, terrified by her appearance, shakily pointed to an envelope on the table. Eleanor snatched it, tore it open violently, and saw Elias's neat handwriting in the farewell letter he'd left for the nanny. In it, he thanked Mrs. Johnson for her years of care and briefly explained his decision to take Ethan to live in Switzerland. At the end of the letter was a sentence that sent a chill down her spine, plunging her into an icy abyss. "Eleanor is very busy with work. We have divorced by mutual agreement, and she has also agreed to grant me full custody of Ethan. Please do not trouble yourself with our affairs any longer." Eleanor's hand trembled like a leaf in the wind, and the letter fluttered from her grasp. She scrambled madly into her own study, frantically digging through the pile of documents she had carelessly tossed in a corner. Finally, she found it. The supplemental agreement regarding the custody of the marital child, Ethan Vance, signed with her own name. When she finally read the black and white print, the clauses written in the most rigorous legal terms, her entire world collapsed in an instant. The mother, Eleanor Hayes, voluntarily gives up all rights to custody, visitation, and guardianship of Ethan Vance. Voluntarily gives up. She remembered. That night, Elias had calmly handed her this document, mixed in with a stack of bills. She had been on the phone, annoyed and distracted, and had signed it without a second thought. She thought it was some insignificant permission slip for kindergarten, so he had been setting his trap from the very beginning. He had used his calm and his intelligence to set the perfect snare for her. And she, like an arrogant fool, had personally signed the contract that sent her own son away. "Elias Vance!" A heart-wrenching roar echoed through the entire mansion. She grabbed her phone from the desk and frantically dialed the number she knew by heart. "We're sorry. The number you have dialed is no longer in service." The cold, mechanical voice was like a series of daggers stabbing her heart over and over again. She went crazy, sweeping everything off her desk, the computer, the files, the pen holder. They crashed to the floor, shattering into a million pieces, just like her heart. Liam had just caught up to her. Seeing the wreckage in the study and Eleanor's complete breakdown, he turned pale. "Eleanor, what's wrong? What happened?" Eleanor whipped her head around, her bloodshot eyes glaring at him, looking like she wanted to tear him apart. "Get out!" she hissed through her teeth. "All of you, get out!" She had never looked at him with such terrifying eyes. Liam stumbled backward, not daring to say another word, and fled in a panic. In the empty study, only Eleanor's heavy, ragged breathing remained. She slid weakly to the floor, her back against the cold desk, her hands digging painfully into her hair. She had lost. Utterly and completely. She thought she had been in control of everything, only to be played by the man she despised the most. He had taken nothing, yet he had taken the one thing in her life that could not be measured by money, the most important thing. Her son. A strangled, animalistic sob escaped Eleanor's throat. In that moment, she finally truly understood what she had lost. Liam began his life as the man of the house, in a state of extreme terror and unease. After her breakdown that day, Eleanor became a completely different person. She was no longer the confident, all-powerful queen of finance, but a restless, irritable beast trapped in a cage. She locked herself in the study, smoking and drinking day and night. The door remained shut, and no one was allowed to enter. She began a frantic search, using all her connections and resources to find Elias and Ethan. She sent people to every city in Switzerland, casting a wide net in an attempt to find the vanished father and son. But Elias had disappeared, as if he had evaporated into thin air. He hadn't used any bank cards linked to her, nor had he checked into any hotel that could be traced with his old identity. For the first time, Eleanor felt powerless. In the world she had built with money and power, she had always been invincible. But now she was like a soldier stripped of all her weapons, left to scream helplessly in place. Just as she was at her wits' end, an unexpected visitor arrived, plunging her already chaotic life into further turmoil with a final, devastating blow. It was her mother, Mrs. Hayes. The head of the Hayes Group, she was a formidable, shrewd woman with an iron grip on her daughter. She had never been fond of Elias, her son-in-law, who in her eyes had nothing to offer but good looks. She saw Elias's artistic sensibilities and lofty ideals as a waste of time. In contrast, the sweet-talking, flattering Liam, with his pitiable child in tow, seemed to pique her curiosity. So when Eleanor told her about the divorce, she hadn't objected. She had come today to personally inspect the man who had so thoroughly captivated her daughter. "Eleanor, what on earth has happened to you?" Mrs. Hayes said, frowning as she took in her disheveled, alcohol-soaked daughter and the trashed study. "It was just a divorce. Is it worth all this drama? Let Elias go. I never liked him anyway." Eleanor ignored her, waving a dismissive hand for her to leave. But Mrs. Hayes persisted, seating herself on the sofa and casting a critical eye over the trembling Liam. "You must be Liam Cole," she said, her tone appraising as she looked him up and down. "I hear you have a child, and have had a difficult time on your own. Eleanor has a soft heart. It's understandable she'd want to help you." Liam quickly lowered his head, feigning meekness. "Hello, ma'am. Eleanor is just very kind." Mrs. Hayes nodded. Then her tone shifted. "However, in the Hayes family, we like to have all the facts straight. I had someone look into you." She pulled a large envelope from her expensive handbag and tossed it onto the coffee table. Liam's face went white when he saw the envelope. That's not necessary, ma'am," he stammered, waving his hands frantically. My situation. I've told Eleanor everything." "Have you?" Mrs. Hayes said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Because what I found seems to differ from what you've said." A cold sweat broke out on Liam's forehead. His backstory was a complete lie. He had told Eleanor he was fleeing an abusive ex-girlfriend, Sarah, with his child, a boy he called Ethan as well. He thought that if he could just get Eleanor to divorce Elias and secure his own position, the lie would hold. He never dreamed Mrs. Hayes would pull a stunt like this. The air in the living room grew thick enough to cut. Liam's heart pounded like a drum. His palms were slick with sweat, and a single thought screamed in his mind. It's over. It's all over. Eleanor, lost in the pain of losing. Her son was oblivious to the drama. "Mom, can you not add to the chaos right now?" she said. "I'm not in the mood." "I'm adding to the chaos?" Mrs. Hayes's voice rose. "I'm trying to keep you from getting conned out of your entire fortune. You sit down and listen. We are getting to the bottom of this today." Mrs. Hayes opened the envelope and slammed a stack of photos and documents onto the table. "Mr. Cole, you said your ex-girlfriend Sarah was abusive, and you left her to protect your child, correct?" Then can you explain why someone took a photo of the two of you enjoying an intimate dinner at a high-end restaurant just last week? You said you were desperate and penniless? Then what about this $50,000 transfer into your account? Oh, I checked. The sender was none other than your abusive ex-girlfriend, Sarah. And your child? You told Eleanor he has a heart condition and needs a fortune for surgery, but the hospital records I obtained show he's perfectly healthy. He rarely even catches a cold. With every accusation Mrs. Hayes uttered, Liam's face grew paler. Finally, he collapsed onto the sofa, completely drained of color. The words were like a series of bombs detonating in the living room. Eleanor slowly lifted her head, and the unfocused glaze in her eyes sharpened into a terrifying light. She stared at the trembling, defeated man on the sofa, and a smile uglier than any cry spread across her face. A scam. It was all a scam from beginning to end. A meticulously designed trap laid for her by the man she loved most. For this scam, she had personally destroyed her own family. For this scam, she had personally signed away custody of her own son. For this scam, she had become a complete and utter fool. Eleanor suddenly burst into laughter, laughing until tears streamed down her face. The sound was shrill and desperate, the final wail of a dying animal. As she laughed, she slowly rose to her feet and walked step by step toward the man who was now petrified with fear. "Liam Cole," she said, her voice as light as a whisper, but as cold as ice. "You played a very, very good game." While Eleanor's world was falling apart, mine was being slowly rebuilt under the Swiss sun. Winters in Zurich are cold but bright. The sun scattered like crushed diamonds across the sparkling surface of Lake Zurich. In the distance, the snow-capped Alps stood like a silver dragon, silently guarding the ancient, tranquil city. It was just as beautiful as I remembered. I settled with Ethan in an apartment by the lake. It wasn't large, but it was warm and comfortable, with huge floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water and mountains. Every morning, I woke to the sound of seagulls, and when I opened the window, I could breathe in the crisp air, tinged with the scent of grass and water. Ethan's cough never acted up here. He quickly adapted to the new environment, running and laughing on the lawn in front of our building like a happy little bird. His face was once again filled with the carefree joy I had missed for so long. Seeing him so happy, I knew I had made the right choice. On our third day, I contacted my old friend, Vera Lynn. She wasn't just a friend from my university days, she was my best friend and my former curating partner. We had won that gold medal together and once dreamed of changing the contemporary art scene back home. Later, she returned to Switzerland for family reasons, inheriting her family's gallery and art foundation, while I married Eleanor and put my dreams on a shelf. We hadn't been in close contact over the years, but our bond had never faded. When I told her I was divorced and had come to Switzerland with my son, she didn't ask a single question. She just said in her usual gentle voice, "Welcome home, Elias. Whatever you need, just ask." Home. Hearing that word, my eyes nearly welled up. I didn't stand on ceremony with her. I needed a job, I needed to rebuild my social circle, and I needed to get on my feet in this new country as quickly as possible. Vera gave me her full support. She not only helped me secure a residency permit, but also gave me control of an independent wing of her gallery. "This will be your studio from now on," she said with a smile, leading me through the bright, airy space filled with classical charm. "You can curate any exhibition you want, according to your own vision. Funding, connections, I'll back you all the way." I looked into her warm eyes, my heart filled with gratitude. Vera, thank you. There's no need for thanks between us, she said, gently patting my shoulder. I just don't want to see that spark go out again. Her words were like a key unlocking a door in my heart that had been sealed for years. She was right. That spark could not go out again. I spent 2 weeks transforming the space into a unique art studio. I named it The Horizon, a name signifying a broad, sweeping view. I hoped it would become a bridge connecting the past and the future, the East and the West. For the studio's inaugural project, I curated a small auction titled Rebirth. The pieces were from my private collection of works by contemporary young artists, along with a few of my own designs. I sent out invitations to local Zurich art critics, curators, and some of Vera's friends. On the day of the auction, I wore a custom-tailored suit of black velvet with silver thread bamboo leaves embroidered on the collar and cuffs, elegant and refined. I stood on the stage, using fluent English to introduce the stories and concepts behind each piece. In that moment, I felt alive again. The quiet, cautious husband of Eleanor Hayes was finally dead. In his place stood Elias Vance, the confident, eloquent curator, back in the spotlight. The auction was a great success. Every piece sold for far more than expected. A pair of cufflinks I designed, titled Chrysalis, was bought by a mysterious bidder for 300,000 euros. When the auctioneer's hammer fell, the room erupted in applause. I stood on the stage, looking at the admiring faces in the audience, my eyes slightly moist. Vera came to my side and handed me a glass of champagne. "Congratulations, Elias," she whispered. "You've laid the first stone of your world." I took the glass and clinked it gently against hers. To Rebirth. At the dinner that followed, Ethan, dressed in a handsome little suit, followed Vera around like a tiny gentleman. He could already greet the guests in simple German and French. Vera treated him like her own nephew, patient and gentle. Ethan adored her, constantly calling her Auntie Vera. Watching the two of them together, my heart warmed. Perhaps leaving that house of lies and betrayal was a blessing for Ethan, too. He could grow up in a healthier, purer environment and learn how to love and trust again. And I could finally let go of all my pretenses and defenses and start living for myself again. Life in Switzerland was peaceful and fulfilling. My studio, The Horizon, gradually made a name for itself in Zurich's art scene. The exhibitions I curated received positive reviews. I started painting again, designing jewelry. The creative urges I had suppressed for so long erupted like a volcano. I was busy, but happy. The best part of my day was picking Ethan up from kindergarten. In the bilingual environment, his linguistic talents blossomed, and he could now switch fluently between Mandarin, German, and French. He became more outgoing and made many friends from different backgrounds. After school, we would go to the lake to feed the swans or have hot chocolate in a small cabin on the mountain. On weekends, Vera would take us skiing in the Alps or to a concert in Lucerne. Life felt like a gentle, flowing poem. As for Eleanor, I had almost forgotten she existed. I had blocked all her contact information and never asked my friends back home about her. In my mind, she was a closed chapter in my life, one filled with mistakes and errors. However, 2 months after I arrived in Switzerland, I received an email forwarded from Michael. The subject line read, "Elias, where the hell are you?" The sender was Eleanor. Michael had added a note at the beginning. "Elias, Eleanor found my firm's public email address and has been sending these. I didn't want to bother you, but she's been at it almost every day for the past 2 months, and the content is getting more intense. I'm worried she might do something irrational. I thought you should know." I hesitated for a moment, then opened the email. It was a letter filled with rage and accusations. "Elias Vance, you have a heart of stone. How dare you take Ethan? He is my son. You used such a despicable trick to make me sign that document. You are a monster. I'm telling you, I don't care where you are. I will find you, and you will give me back my son." The letter ended with a string of exclamation points so forceful I could almost see her face twisted with rage. I dragged the email to the trash without a flicker of emotion. From that day on, I received forwarded emails from Eleanor every couple of days. The content began to change subtly. The initial anger and threats gave way to questions and confusion. Why? What did I ever do to you? I gave you the best life, a life without any worries. Why did you still betray me? Was it because of Liam? I admit I was wrong, but what successful woman doesn't have a few admirers? As my husband, why couldn't you be a little more understanding? Reading that, I let out a cold laugh. Understanding? There it was again. In her world, a man's pain and dignity could be easily dismissed with the word understanding. I still didn't reply. I just deleted it. After some time, the tone of the emails shifted again, to pleading and remorse. "Elias, I was wrong. I was so wrong. I found out everything. Liam was a complete fraud, a scam he designed from the very beginning. I've cut ties with him completely, thrown him out. I was an idiot. I was blind to believe him and to hurt you and Ethan. Please come back. If you come back, I'll do anything. We can get remarried. I'll give you half of my company shares. Elias, I miss Ethan. I'm going crazy. I can't sleep at night. Every time I close my eyes, I see his smiling face. I can't even go into his room anymore. I'm afraid I'll lose my mind. Please just let me see him. Just once. A video call is fine. I'm begging you." Her words grew more and more desperate, more pained. I could almost picture the once invincible woman typing out these regret-filled words, night after night. But my heart was like still water. It wasn't that I was unmoved. It was that I was long past the stage where I needed her apologies. It was like a shattered mirror. Even if you glue it back together with the best adhesive, the cracks will always be there. And I had already swept the pieces of my mirror into the trash heap of history. The last time I opened one of her emails was on a snowy afternoon. The letter was short, just one sentence. "Elias, today is my 35th birthday. You always used to make me special noodles. This year, I'm alone with a bowl of instant ramen. I've suddenly realized that without you and Ethan, this home is colder than the Arctic." I stared at the words for a long time. Then I replied to Michael. "Michael, please don't forward any more of her emails. Also, I need you to officially inform her that I have instructed my Swiss attorney to issue a restraining order. If she attempts to contact me again through any channel, I will pursue further legal action." After sending the email, I closed my laptop and walked to the window. Snowflakes were falling gently, painting the world a pure, pristine white. Down below, Vera was building a large snowman with Ethan. His laughter, like silver bells, carried up to me through the wind and snow. I watched them, a small smile forming on my lips. "Eleanor, your remorse has come too late. You don't miss me. You miss the complete family that you yourself destroyed. Just when I thought the name Liam Cole would vanish from my world forever, a long-distance call from back home brought it roaring back." It was my best friend from college, Alex. "Elias, you'll never guess who I ran into today," Alex said, his voice sounding complicated. "Who?" "Liam Cole. My heart sank slightly. Alex continued. He cornered me in a coffee shop and just started rambling. Said Eleanor threw him out, that he's broke and has nowhere to go. He begged me to give him your contact info, said he wanted to apologize to you in person. Did you give it to him? I asked, my voice calm. Of course not. No way in hell. Alex's voice rose. I chewed him out and told him to get lost. What right does a guy like that have to ask for your forgiveness? I smiled. Good for you. But Alex's tone became hesitant. He said some things about him, Eleanor, and you. I think you might need to hear it. Through Alex's fragmented account, I finally pieced together the story of Liam's twisted motivations. It turned out his jealousy of me had started the very first day we set foot on campus. I came from a family of academics. Both my parents were university professors, and we were well off. Liam, on the other hand, came from a poor, small town. His father was a gambling addict and an alcoholic, his mother a long-suffering housewife. He had clawed his way into a top university through sheer grit, the only one from his entire village to do so. We were in the same class. He was jealous that I had an endless supply of designer clothes, the latest gadgets, and parents who would pick me up in a nice car on weekends. He was even more jealous of the effortless, breezy confidence I carried, something he could never emulate. It seemed I never had to worry about a thing. I won scholarships with ease, my design projects always earned the highest praise from professors, and even the most dazzling girl on campus, Eleanor Hayes, had eyes for me. He began to obsessively imitate me. Whatever I wore, he'd go to a wholesale market the next day to find a cheap knockoff. Whatever cologne I used, he'd save up his living expenses for months to buy a low-cost imitation. When I entered the curation competition, he signed up, too, only to fail miserably. His mimicry was clumsy and pathetic, which only fueled his insecurity and jealousy. He felt life was unfair. Why was I born with everything, while he had to struggle just to survive? This warped mindset peaked the day I proposed to Eleanor. On that day, his jealousy curdled into a venomous hatred. He swore that one day he would take everything I had. After graduation, I supported Eleanor as she started her business, while he used every trick in the book to get a job at her rival's company, becoming a corporate spy. He used his looks and cunning to steal trade secrets, enriching himself while secretly causing trouble for Eleanor's company. Eleanor never knew his true identity. She only saw a quiet guy from college who had turned out to be surprisingly bold and effective in the business world. Later, as I gradually stepped back from my career to focus on our family, Liam saw his chance. He quit his job and orchestrated a few chance encounters with Eleanor. He showered her with attention, expressing boundless admiration and understanding. He told her that an outstanding woman like her deserved a partner who could fight by her side, not an artist husband who stayed at home, detached from the real world. His words struck a chord with Eleanor's swelling ego at the time. And so they naturally got together. He said he never loved her, Alex sighed on the other end of the line. He only loved the idea of being Eleanor Hayes' husband, the thrill of defeating you. He said his life's goal was to replace you and then to destroy you. I listened quietly, feeling no anger, only a profound sadness. Sadness for Liam and for the man I used to be. When a person bases their entire self-worth on defeating someone else, whether in the name of love or hate, it's an absolute tragedy. How is he now? I asked. What do you think? After Eleanor kicked him to the curb, he realized he was nothing. He has no real degree to speak of, no decent work experience. All these years he poured all his energy into scheming against you and pleasing Eleanor. Now he can't even find a respectable job. And Alex paused, a note of pity in his voice. I heard his gambling addict father racked up another huge debt, and the loan sharks are camped outside his tiny, rundown apartment every day. He's probably hit rock bottom. After hanging up, I walked to the window and looked out at the peaceful, snowy landscape. Liam's tragedy was of his own making. His original sin was a heart corroded by jealousy. I wouldn't pity him, and I would certainly never forgive him. He had hurt not just me, but my innocent son. But I wouldn't hate him either, because the man I was now stood at a height he could never hope to reach. My world was filled with sunlight, art, a son who loved me, and true friends. I only heard about Liam's final fate much later from Alex. By then, I had held my third solo exhibition in Switzerland, and Ethan was in the first grade. Alex told me that after being thrown out by Eleanor, Liam went through a period of utter desperation. While Eleanor didn't completely destroy him, she used her influence to make sure he was blacklisted from the entire finance and fashion industries. The friends he had made through his status as Eleanor Hayes's boyfriend vanished overnight. He finally understood that everything he thought he had was just an illusion. Without Eleanor to cling to, he was nothing. To make matters worse, his gambling addict father somehow found out he'd been dumped by the rich heiress and, like a shark smelling blood, showed up at his tiny rented apartment. He wasn't there to see if his son was okay. He was there for money. "You were with that lady boss, right? She must have given you a hefty breakup settlement. Hand it over. I owe a mountain of debt, and if I don't pay up, they're going to break my hands." Liam looked at the man who was technically his father, his face a mask of greed and shamelessness, and felt a wave of despair wash over him. "What money? The bags and jewelry Eleanor had given him were long sold off to pay for rent and daily expenses. I don't have any money," he cried. "I don't have a single cent left." His father didn't believe him. He was convinced Liam was hiding a fortune, and the argument quickly escalated to violence. During a heated struggle, his father shoved him. He fell, and his head slammed hard against the corner of a table. Blood gushed from the wound. Staring at his son lying in a pool of blood, the man felt not an ounce of remorse. Alex finished the story with a heavy sigh. "It's karma, man. What goes around comes around." I listened in silence, feeling no sense of satisfaction, only a detached indifference. Liam chose his own end. When he decided to build a life on lies and manipulation, he should have known that one day he would be consumed by his own desires. His entire life was spent envying me, imitating me, trying to replace me. But he never once tried to become himself. He thought being Eleanor's partner was the ultimate prize, but he never understood that for a person without an independent spirit, another person can never be a savior. Someone can be the icing on your cake, but they can never be your lifeline. It took me 7 years and a broken heart to learn that lesson. Liam, it seemed, would have the rest of his life to figure it out. Time flew. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. In those 2 years, my life changed completely. My studio, The Horizon, became a well-known platform for contemporary art in Europe, and my exhibitions were featured on the covers of international art magazines. My own jewelry design brand, Vance Gems, gained a following among European elites. I was no longer anyone's accessory. I had become my own source of light. My relationship with Vera also deepened naturally over time. She understood me, respected me, and supported all my decisions. She would join me for 4:00 a.m. viewings at art galleries and quietly make me a bowl of hot noodle soup when I hit a creative block. She gave me a sense of stability and security that Eleanor never could. Ethan was now 7, a smart, well-behaved, and slightly mischievous little boy. He saw Vera as his closest family. Though he knew she wasn't his biological mother, in his heart, Vera had long since replaced the vague, photo-only image of Mom. I thought my life would continue on this peaceful, beautiful path forever. But then one day, Eleanor's appearance shattered the tranquility. It was a sunny winter afternoon. Vera's private museum was hosting a charity exhibition featuring a series of works Ethan and I had created together. The event was a success, with guests praising the sense of rebirth and strength in my art. Just as the exhibition was ending and I was about to leave with Vera and Ethan, a familiar yet strange figure appeared at the museum entrance. It was her, Eleanor. She had changed a lot in 2 years. The impeccably dressed, ever-composed business queen was now gaunt and haggard. Her hair was slightly disheveled, her face etched with exhaustion. Her eyes were sunken and bloodshot. She had lost a lot of weight. Her custom-tailored suit hung loosely on her frame. Time had finally carved its indelible marks upon her. She walked through the crowd, heading straight for me. The other guests watched this sudden, formidable Eastern woman with curiosity. Vera instinctively moved to shield Ethan behind her. Eleanor stopped 3 feet away from me. Her gaze was glued to me. Then it moved past me to Ethan. Her eyes were a storm of shock, pain, regret, and a fragile, near-desperate vulnerability I couldn't quite decipher. "Elias," she began, her voice as raw as sandpaper. "I finally found you." I looked at her, my heart perfectly calm. There was no hate, no love, just the feeling of looking at a complete stranger who had nothing to do with my life. "Ms. Hayes," I said, my tone distant and polite. "I believe there is nothing left for us to say to each other." "No, there is," she said, taking an agitated step forward. "Elias, please let me explain. The thing with Liam was my fault. I was out of my mind. I was an idiot. I've already made him pay the price. There hasn't been a single day in these past 2 years that I haven't thought about you and Ethan. That's enough," I interrupted. "Your affairs have nothing to do with me. We are divorced." "But Ethan," her desperate gaze fell on him. "He's my son. You can't take away my right to be a mother." "A mother?" I let out a cold laugh, as if I'd heard the world's greatest joke. "Ms. Hayes, you seem to have forgotten that you personally signed a document stating you voluntarily give up all custody. It's in black and white, legally binding." My words were like daggers stabbing into her heart once again. The color drained from her face. She closed her eyes in pain, her body trembling slightly. When she opened them again, the once proud, invincible woman did something that shocked everyone present. She fell to her knees before me. "Elias," she pleaded, looking up, her once fiery eyes now filled with tears. "I'm begging you, forgive me. I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I'm willing to give up everything, my company, my fortune. I don't want any of it. I just want to see Ethan, to talk to him, even just once." Her voice was a broken, humble plea. A collective gasp went through the remaining crowd. Everyone was stunned by the dramatic scene. I looked down at the woman kneeling before me, and my heart felt nothing. Belated affection is cheaper than dirt, and her affection was nothing more than a low-cost payment for her own mistakes. I ignored her, crouching down to pull Ethan, who had been startled by the scene, into a tight hug. The air outside the museum grew heavy and stagnant from the sudden confrontation. Sunlight reflected off the snow on the Alps, a blinding glare that made it hard to see. Eleanor remained kneeling on the cold stone steps. The hard, sharp edges of the marble pressed into her knees, but she seemed to feel no pain. Her entire being was focused into her red, pleading eyes, locked on me and the child in my arms. The onlookers had tactfully dispersed, leaving only a few museum staff members standing at a distance, unsure of what to do. Vera stood by my side, her slender hand resting gently on my shoulder, a silent offering of strength. Her presence was a calm harbor, instantly steadying my own turbulent heart. I held Ethan, whispering reassurances. The little guy was clearly frightened by the tense scene. He buried his face in my neck, his small hands clinging tightly to me. "Daddy, who is that person? Why is she kneeling?" Ethan whispered in my ear, his voice small and innocent. My heart stung. How could I answer him? Tell him this was the biological mother who had been absent for 2 years, now suddenly appearing to claim him back? I couldn't. I wouldn't let Eleanor's mistakes become Ethan's punishment. As I was trying to figure out what to say, Eleanor spoke again, her voice choked with sobs. "Ethan, I'm Mommy! Ethan, don't you remember Mommy?" She tried to crawl forward on her knees to get closer, but Vera stepped forward, subtly blocking her path. "Ms. Hayes," Vera's voice was gentle but firm. "Please calm down. You're frightening the child." Eleanor looked up, her bloodshot eyes finally focusing on the woman standing beside me. A flash of hostility and jealousy ignited in her gaze. "Who are you? This has nothing to do with you. This is our family business," she shrieked. "Family business?" Vera smiled faintly. The smile was warm, yet it carried the sharp, confident air of someone in charge. "I'm afraid you're mistaken, Ms. Hayes. Elias and Ethan are my family now. Their business is my business." "Your family?" Eleanor scoffed, as if she'd heard the world's biggest joke. She pointed at Vera, then at me, her voice trembling with agitation. "Elias, you moved on that fast? You left me, schemed to take my son away all for her?" Her accusation was absurd and laughable. I looked her directly in the eyes, my gaze as cold as the snow under our feet. "Eleanor, save your pathetic, self-serving logic. I didn't leave you for anyone else. I left you because you are not worthy." Not worthy. The words were like 3 hard slaps across Eleanor's face. She froze, the blood draining from her cheeks. She had probably never imagined that one day she would hear such a final, damning judgment from the man who had once been so devoted to her. Just then, a clear, slightly puzzled voice broke the tense silence. Ethan peeked out from my arms. He looked at the kneeling Eleanor, then at Vera, standing in front of him. Then he did something that stunned everyone present and shattered Eleanor's world. He wriggled out of my embrace, ran to Vera's side, and reached up to naturally take her hand. He tilted his head back, looked up at her, and in fluent, affectionate Mandarin called out clearly, "Mommy!" Then he turned to the woman who was now frozen in place, blinked his big, dark eyes, and said in a polite, slightly distant tone, "Hello, ma'am." Eleanor's pupils dilated. The color vanished from her face, and her lips trembled. But no words came out. She could never have dreamed that her son, the son she had schemed and searched for so desperately, would, upon seeing her for the first time, not run into her arms, but call another woman the name she had longed to hear for 2 years. It took a long moment for her to snap out of her nightmare. She looked up, her bloodshot eyes fixated on me, filled with a wild, desperate accusation. "Elias Vance, what did you do to him?" she screamed, her voice distorted by rage and pain. "How could you let him call someone else Mommy? How dare you? I'm his biological mother. You're brainwashing him. You're turning him against me. You're evil." Her accusations rained down on me like a torrent of filth. The Elias of 2 years ago might have been angered, might have felt the need to argue. But now, looking at her face made ugly by jealousy, I felt nothing but a calm, unwavering indifference. You cannot speak of ice to a summer insect. What right did a person who had never fulfilled the duties of a mother have to talk about a mother-child relationship? I didn't answer her. I didn't even spare her an extra glance. I just knelt down, gently smoothed Ethan's wind-tousled hair, and said, "Ethan, let's go home. Mommy made your favorite mac and cheese." My voice was soft, but loud enough for everyone to hear. I intentionally said Mommy with natural ease. It was my stance and my final verdict. Ethan cheered happily and nodded. I stood up and took Ethan's other hand. Vera naturally held his other side. The three of us formed a solid, impenetrable triangle. We turned to leave. "Don't you go!" Eleanor's desperate roar came from behind us. She scrambled up from the ground and charged at us like a cornered beast, trying to grab Ethan. "Ethan, I'm your mother! Look at me! I'm your mother!" Museum security guards rushed over, grabbing the out-of-control Eleanor by each arm. "Let go of me! Let me go!" Eleanor struggled wildly, but it was no use. "Elias Vance, you can't do this to me! You can't take my son!" I stopped and turned back. It was the last time I would ever truly look at her. I saw her restrained by the guards, a pathetic mess. I saw the face I once adored now twisted into a mask of madness and fury. My eyes held no hatred, no resentment, not even a shred of pity. There was only a complete, cold, and superior indifference, as if I were looking at a hysterical stranger on the street whose antics failed to arouse any interest. Then I turned to Vera and gave her a reassuring, apologetic smile, as if to say, "Sorry you had to see that." Vera returned a gentle, comforting look. We shared a smile, a silent understanding passing between us. Then, holding Ethan's hand, I walked through the museum's side door without a single look back. That confrontation at the foot of the snowy mountains was the last time Eleanor and I ever crossed paths. After that day, she never appeared in my life again. I heard later that she sat outside the museum in a daze for the entire afternoon, only being forcibly taken away by her assistant after nightfall. When she returned to the country, she completely fell apart. She began drinking even more heavily, using alcohol to numb the pain. She stopped going to the office, handing over all responsibilities to her vice president. She locked herself in that cavernous mansion, a place filled with the ghosts of me and Ethan, and drowned herself day after day in regret and self-torment. The business world is a battlefield, ever-changing. A company that loses its leader is like a ship that loses its rudder, quickly losing its way in the turbulent seas. Due to a series of aggressive, misguided investment decisions she had made, coupled with her subsequent neglect, Eleanor's company soon faced a massive financial crisis. The once mighty business empire teetered on the brink of bankruptcy within a year. She herself, suffering from chronic alcoholism and severe depression, was eventually admitted to a private hospital by her family. Alex told me all this during a video call, treating it like gossip. I listened quietly, my heart unruffled. "Elias, don't you feel a little vindicated?" Alex asked cautiously. I shook my head and smiled. "Alex, when you still care about who wins or loses a war, it means you're still on the battlefield. Me? I retired a long time ago." It was true. Her world, whether in splendor or ruin, had nothing to do with me anymore. I ended the call and walked to the window. It was a bright afternoon. Summer in Switzerland was as beautiful as a painting. The garden was lush and green, blooming with flowers. Ethan and Vera were on the lawn, engrossed in building a giant Lego castle. The sun cast a golden halo around them. "Daddy, come look! Our castle just needs a roof!" Ethan saw me and waved excitedly. I smiled and walked over, crouching down to place the final red block on the castle's spire. "There! It's finished." Ethan cheered, throwing his arms around my neck and planting a big kiss on my cheek. Vera smiled and wrapped her long arms around me, drawing me into a warm embrace. She whispered in my ear, in her uniquely gentle voice, "Our castle needs a king. Elias Vance, will you marry me?" There were no flowers, no ring, just the simplest, most sincere question. I looked into her eyes, which were filled with starlight and tenderness. I saw the reflection of a man smiling with pure happiness, and I nodded with all my heart. I once thought my world had been reduced to ruins by a failed marriage, but now I know that some endings are not conclusions, but new beginnings. Only by completely letting go of the wrong person can you finally meet the right one. I looked at the woman I loved, at our wonderful son, at the unbreakable castle we had built together, and I felt a sense of peace and wholeness I had never known before. The distant ruins had long been swept away by the winds of time, and I had finally found my own everlasting freedom.